This is a WMUR Commitment 2024 special in partnership with the New Hampshire Institute of Politics. Conversation with the candidate. And now, Democratic nominee for the 2nd Congressional District, Maggie Goodlander.
Hello and welcome to our Conversation with the Candidate series. I'm Adam Sexton, and our guest this morning is the Democratic nominee in the 2nd Congressional District, Maggie Goodlander. We'll be getting to know her and where she stands on key issues. At the start of our show, I'll be asking the candidate some questions, and then after a break, we'll have our studio audience ask their questions in a town hall format. But before we begin with that, let's take a quick look at the candidate's biography. Maggie Goodlander says her record of federal service has prepared her for a seat in Congress. That experience includes working as a foreign policy advisor in the U.S. Senate, an intelligence officer in the Navy Reserve, and as a clerk on the U.S. Supreme Court. She was a deputy assistant attorney general at the Department of Justice and held a senior advisory position in President Biden's administration, where her husband is still national security advisor. Goodlander was born in Nashua. She attended Yale College and Yale Law School. All right, Ms. Goodlander, thanks for joining us here on Conversation with the Candidate.
Thanks so much for having me, Adam.
So if you win this race, you'll be on the more youthful end of the congressional spectrum, and you could potentially serve for a long time. The years ahead are going to see a rapid increase in the amount of the debt service payments that the United States government has to pay on its federal debt. Some estimate it could be $1.7 trillion a year by 2034. So if you get to Congress, are you going to advocate for cutting spending or continuing to borrow and spend even more?
Well, Adam, thank you for having me on today, and thank you for bringing together this great conversation. No one does democracy better than we do in New Hampshire, and this is a job interview for a really hard job in an unprecedented moment in our nation's history. And, you know, I come to this job with a lot of experience working on a bipartisan basis. And the last time that Congress really came together on a bipartisan basis to address the national debt, you know, which is a national security issue, it's a long-term issue that our country's got to deal with, it was more than a decade ago. And this is something that I really want to bring to this work right out of the gate. A real effort to take a hard look. We've got a lot of opportunities and a lot of work ahead of us, and this is something that I will bring New Hampshire values to this debate and to the task, because that's what we need in Congress.
You know, there's a generation of young Democrats that are coming up within your party that's not just skeptical of, but hostile toward the nation of Israel, which is America's greatest ally in the Middle East. When you encounter these young voters, do you try to change their minds? Or do you think eventually you're going to have to change your position to adapt to what will probably become a mainstream viewpoint within the Democratic Party at some point?
You know, Adam, early in my career, I worked as a foreign policy advisor in the United States Senate at a time when there was a bipartisan, bicameral supermajority that worked together on issues across the board of national security and foreign policy. And I want to be a part of rebuilding that bipartisan, bicameral supermajority. You know, I have had really great conversations with voters all across the district, students, you know, working parents who have weighed in on these issues, and it's an important part of our democracy. But what I know from my experience serving 11 years as an intelligence officer in the Navy Reserve, when we are talking about war zones, and when we're talking about the ways in which the United States supports our partners and allies around the world, these are decisions that really require a deep understanding of the facts on the ground, and that's the spirit that I will bring to this work.
But in terms of talking to younger people about this, do you have to ever try to redirect them when they say this is a genocide that Israel's committing?
You know, I've had spirited conversations. I taught constitutional law at both UNH Law and at Dartmouth, so I've spent a lot of time with students in the district. And these spirited discussions are ones, you know, when it comes to questions about whether a nation state has committed a war crime, these are judgments that are made by prosecutors and investigators, not by congressional candidates. All
right, before we wrap up, I want to ask you, is there a gun control law Congress can pass that will pass muster with this current U.S. Supreme Court?
You know, I believe there is, and I was really proud of the Biden-Harris administration brought about the most significant piece of gun violence prevention legislation that we've seen in the last 30 years with the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. It was an important first step, but it's exactly that, just a first step. So I'm going to bring real energy to the effort to address this problem, because guns are the #1 killer of our kids in America, Adam. It's an unacceptable current state of play, and Congress has got to step up.
All right. Don't go anywhere, Ms. Goodlander. We're going to continue this conversation. Coming up after the break, we'll bring our studio audience here into the conversation. Stay with us.